Hello, beautiful people. You are listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I'm your host, Kat Kinsman, senior editor at Food and Wine, and my guest today is a delightful fellow who has asked us to call him Ishmael, but he is the co-creator, supermodel, co-author of everything Big Gay Ice Cream.
Testatrix. I think that term has something to do with the person who reads the will or something. The testatrix.
Okay.
I had a friend becoming a notary who was studying to be a notary public.
Okay, this is one of my dreams.
To be a notary public?
Yes. I think it's important to have small dreams. One of them was to become an election worker, which I did.
I had a friend and he and his wife both studied court stenography. What is that? What the person is named,
yeah.
stenographer? And
Yeah, with the little machine.
Yeah, and it was really, really intense, that training.
Yeah, the notary public, I think, is a little bit less intense, but you get a stamp, you get a seal.
I think there's a Strangers with Candy with a notary public or something like
yes.
that. Oh, no, it's a calculator that Chuck Knoblet has. We're going to add up your score, Jerry, and see what career you should have. Chunky whore.
Is that a flavor of Big Gay Ice Cream, by the way?
No, Glint would be, but it's too much of an inside joke. For the right event, that'd be fantastic.
Right. Okay. So you and I go back a bit. In fact, for folks who are just listening, I'm reaching down into my Big Gay Ice Cream bag to pull out photographic evidence of the first time that Doug and I met.
Whoa. I have no idea what's
You
about to
don't
happen.
remember this. Okay. So we met on a shoot for
back when we were deemed like social media goddesses.
in Paper Magazine in May 2011. Duran Duran is on the cover of this magazine, and I don't remember how this happened, but somebody reached out. They were doing the Twitter Tribes of New York, and
that's right. It was different groups.
yeah. So you and I were in
We were the
food group
foodies, or the food trend people, or whatever.
With Tom Colicchio, Kate Crater, and Michelle Humes, who has a great new book out, by the way, The Noodle Soup Oracle.
Is it about soup?
It is. It's about noodle soup.
It's not some sort of metaphor.
No, it's actual. Okay, the social media mania issue is this.
So what is this, like 2011?
2011, yeah. And I will say you were picked because Big Gay Ice Cream it was born out of a lot of social media. Here we are. Okay, I wish people could see this. Maybe we'll include it in the write-up for this. My hair is down.
Do you remember what's wrong with me in this photo?
Oh, yes. You have an extra foot.
I have
yes.
3 feet.
Yes.
I was inserted from another photo or something, and they forgot to take out the feet on the other one. Actually, you can, there's 1, 2, 3 feet.
Because he's wearing checkered Vans, is that? Or a checkered
That
loafer?
was actually a shoe company that Marcus Samuelson used to endorse, and I can't remember the name of them.
Oh, and there's, and also Marco Canora is in this picture. I don't know how they decided to put us all together, but there we are. And that was the first time that we met. We were in the dining room at
Colicchio & Sons.
Yes. And
it was ramp season because Tom had us eat pizzas on
the
ramps.
Oh, right. Yes. And I just thought it was the loveliest thing because I had known of Big Gay Ice Cream. I think I had been following you on Twitter. You had seen me on the Beekman Boys reality show.
Right.
And
it's actually, and I have my friend Andy, who you actually tweet back and forth with a little bit. His name on Twitter is House of Rakes. And he's the one, I used to watch Beekman occasionally, but he was like, watch out for this woman Kat on there. Watch out for the goth. She makes the show when she's on.
Oh my gosh. Well, so it's been such a funny thing to see the progression of this picture because, the Beekman 1802 boys since then have created an empire with their dairy farm, which is, they sell on Home Shopping Network, QVC, all of those things, and it's really blown up hugely. Tom Colicchio, well, he's always been Tom Colicchio. And
always will be. I'm impressed by how Tom puts his politics out there and just does not care what it's going to do to his brand. He believes what he believes.
It's really impressive. But
I can't imagine doing it.
But okay, though, at the same time, you launched out the gate with calling your business Big Gay Ice Cream.
But we never had any agenda behind it.
Okay.
And in fact, when we called it Big Gay Ice Cream, that was a placeholder name for the Facebook group Let me stop back up.
Yeah, let's rewind. Let's go back into
the whole thing, Brian and I decided we would do this ice cream truck because I wanted to do something bizarre for the summer, which was my need to live out my own version of the Santaland Diaries, say David Sedaris.
Okay, and you at this point were you still a professional bassoonist?
Yeah. Oh, and I stayed one for a couple of years, but I was always impressed because, well, first of all, Santaland Diaries is just. It's brilliant that
for people who don't know, it's David Sedaris wrote. Everybody knows it's actually like a diary of working as an elf at Macy's.
For the hell of it.
Yeah.
David Sedaris is one who plunges himself into situations just to write about them. Like who was the?
Oh, he did the Fitbit story where he was walking 100,000 steps a day or something.
How he one of them was how he always asked taxi drivers certain questions in various countries, like what does the chicken say? And or something like that. And what happens the night before Christmas in your culture?
Oh, I like that.
There are ones where Kraken. Wait, not the Kraken. Krampus actually factors in for real still.
Yeah,
do you remember the no reservations with the Krampus?
Oh yes, there was an episode with an animated Krampus sequence that I think was deemed too much for TV, so they had to air it online.
No, it was on TV, but they had a fight.
Yeah,
they had a fight, and it was one of Tony's things where it was like, it's going to be in there, done.
Yeah,
the Krampus, yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea of children being horrified and terrified around a holiday if it's going to go well or if they're going to be butchered.
I think living with, we were right before this, we were talking about sort of being Catholic and all the strangeness and terror that goes up with growing up Catholic, because you were talking about that your aunt had 11 children and the milk machine.
I'm from 7.
Okay. Wow.
And the first and the last were not terribly premeditated.
My husband is, I think, 17 years younger than his next
That's the same.
sibling.
That's the same spread in my
but
family.
They're not Catholic. They just like to have fun, I guess.
I'm the youngest of 7 by 17 years with the age span, and my husband is the youngest of 7 with a 17-year age span, which is really, really ridiculous.
That's really.
And there's also about the same gap between us and the next oldest. And I think in my case, it's 9 years and 11 years. And it's 9 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So we were both sort of accident babies, obviously, because no one. Keep thinking. My father he was still a year older than me right now when I was born, and the idea of having no way.
My goodness, I'm thinking of my husband's parents were I think 43 and 50 or so when he was born. And,
was that did they want to be pregnant?
Pardon me for doing it. I never met him. My father-in-law, he passed away before I met Douglas. But he used to say, Doug, if that rubber didn't have busted, I don't know what me and your mama would have done.
The floodgates opened.
Yes. They're not even Catholic. Yeah, but we were going back to you being a bassoonist and needing a summer project.
Okay. So and I was looking out for stuff to do.
I didn't take my ADHD medication today, by the way.
I
We
did.
started with that. Okay, yeah. Doug and I have a long text thread about our medication. So,
yeah. And I took Seroquel last night too late, so it's been taking a while to wake up this morning.
Okay, I'm glad you're here, though.
I'm too. I'm glad I woke up.
Waking up is really hard when you have a broken brain.
I'm usually glad when I wake up.
Yeah, it's hard zipping your person suit on a whole lot of days.
My human suit over my alien interior skeleton.
Who knows?
Do you remember Weekly World News?
Oh, hell yeah, Bat Boy.
There was a great, of course, Bat Boy. There was a great thing in there about how if someone is clumsy, it's usually because they are an alien, an alien spy on Earth wearing a human body that they don't feel comfortable in the human body that they have on over their interior. So if somebody trips all the time, it's probably an alien with a cumbersome human suit on.
Probably.
Cheers.
Cheers to that. Sipping my coffee and
as I fall out of my chair and become a suspect.
Yes, I already suspected, but whatever comes out, I will love it.
Okay, so
so yes, you're okay.
I wanted a summer job. Another factor here. I was working on my doctorate at the time at City University of New York
in music?
bassoon performance. Yeah, and doing a doctoral program is tough. And I discovered after going to 2 conservatories that going to a real school is tough. And CUNY is a real school.
What's the difference between a conservatory and a school?
A conservatory, pretty much every class you take is music focused somehow.
Okay.
I mean, if you're an undergrad, you end up taking humanities classes, but you don't go there for a strong core curriculum. Your core curriculum is music performance, which is a really, really limited scope.
Yeah.
And like I never took a bibliography course, and I had my master's degree. So, I got to CUNY for my doctorate and had to take this bibliography course, and I was like, this is like I'm actually learning stuff, and this is hard, and I have to research and study. And
did you like it or not?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I discovered, one of my great devices, if I'm going to remember anything, it's a lot of work, but I have to transcribe it. And not transcribe it, I have to read it and comprehend it and then write it out in my own
that I do, yes.
thought process.
Yeah.
I really have to internalize it. Otherwise, it's completely gone. Like, I passed my French proficiency and everything. I can barely utter a word now because
but could you write it?
Doesn't stick that way. I was okay with writing it, but you can only write the rules. Anyhow, so I was working on my doctorate, and the winter of that year, I decided for the summer I wasn't going to do anything about music because that May I will have in the coming May I need to take my comprehensive exams, and I think after that I'm going to be tired and I'm going to want a summer off from music for the first time ever.
What year?
2009.
Okay.
The year we started.
Okay. And then when you're comprehensives, what happens with that?
Okay, so you have written and oral comprehensives, and they are the heads of your department just ask you questions. You have to you have 4 hours to go write answers.
Are they about structure? Are they about history?
They're about anything that you may have studied.
Wow.
Anything.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah. And a great part of the oral ones is if you don't know the answer, you have to give your best answer and then support it, which is really a really great thing to do.
Yeah.
That's something that you have to internalize all of the things about CPE Bach and then write why it might be another Bach, things like that. It's really fun.
Oh my God.
But it's so much work because basically you have to go study the entire history of Western music and all the theory behind Western music, and you have to study the language proficiency you want to pass too. So it's a full day for each test. It might have been 2 days for one of them.
That's exhausting.
Yeah. So when you study for that, all you can really do is say, I'm going to study all day, every day for, as long as I can dedicate to it. And yeah, it was really incredibly fulfilling. And passing that and also having my first proposal, my doctoral thesis
What was your thesis subject?
It was going to be on a Mozart piece that may not be by Mozart.
Oh.
And that if it is by him, it's not fully realized. It's not. It should have been a bassoon concerto instead of a bassoon solo with cello. That kind of thing. Like maybe what it is a sketch that he did. And I wanted to trace the history of that and go look at documents on it and yada yada yada. And they liked that idea. So between getting that approved, doing all the comprehensives, I was like, I'm going to take the summer off. I always went to a music camp. I always did something during the summer. So I started looking on Craigslist for weird jobs.
How do you look specifically for weird jobs? Like, is there a particular filter with their keywords?
No, you just comb through, which is part of the fun also because there are horrible, horrible jobs out there that are so mundane.
What was the worst thing you saw? The worst.
The thing that I definitely didn't want to do was be at the counter at Barnes & Noble. And I don't really know why, but it felt like working around books would be depressing because you wouldn't get to do anything with them. You'd be, I don't know.
I worked at...
I don't know why.
I worked at HMV as a cashier there during a holiday season.
Really?
Oh, that was so intense. People are so mean.
I couldn't work retail in this city. I mean, it's hard enough with our customers, and our customers come to us because they want to have fun.
Oh, yeah.
Except when they come because they want to be I mean, Brian always said there are customers that you need to fire.
Yes.
And sometimes there are customers you can't get them on board.
Yeah. And also, since you have staff, I mean, I've seen a lot of talk about this. Like, your staff realizes, like, you're protecting them if you fire these customers because they're more important to you than terrible people.
A couple of days ago, I came into a West Village store, and the manager was downstairs with one of the counter staff, and she was in a fit. She was locked up. And I asked what happened, and a customer really was a dick to her, and he was reaching over the counter and stuff like that. And she probably got a little snippy too quick.
Uh-huh.
But he really went off on her, and it was really rough. And I talked to her.
Like that?
I talked to her though about when somebody is horrible to you, you should just stand there and smile and know that
it'll drive them nuts.
And I also told her the louder they get, the quieter you get.
Yeah.
Because that drives angry people insane.
Yeah.
You know, you really think you're going to do that to me? Well, what I'm going to do is yeah, you say that to them. And I said to her, and always remember that some people you can't please, and some people don't want you to be happy. Just get quieter and quieter. Take it, and then, it's over. Don't engage, because then it's going to escalate. And, it's kind of fun sometimes to be the dad. Because my dad used to let us fail. And then he would come around if he needed to, but he
That's important, really, truly.
What at the time I thought was getting ignored, he was hovering. And I realized it was a completely different thing that I expected. My dad and I didn't have a lot of similar interests. He liked to run stats on football and all that. And it took a long time before I realized that he was actually watching everything. And when I did need correction, he was there.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
How did the person process it once you told them that?
I could see her go from this to this.
Yeah.
And it had never, the whole getting quieter thing, I think when people learn about that idea, they realize it's been played on them before and how well it works.
Yeah. Because some people...
And also monitoring your body language, just kind of standing...
Yeah.
And not... Or
like open up your body and just seem very
allow
relaxed.
Allow your chakras or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, do everything you can to make them feel like it's not having any effect on you.
Yeah, because I guess people come in there, and I've had this discussion with various people who work in restaurants and things. They like some people, you can't unpiss off some people if they come in pre-pissed off.
Oh yeah.
And
ready. There are people who come to restaurants ready to change the menu.
Oh yeah.
Which I can't take. I can't take it unless you're allergic to something. A good restaurant. The chef he's composed this thing. It's not that he threw items on there. Sorry, yes, or them.
Yeah. Yes, they. Sorry to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to preach to the choir here, but just to go into a place and have them say, well, I like avocado, but I don't think I would want it on there. Well, there's
a reason it's there.
Yeah, yeah. I have a really hard time with that. Order it their way.
Yeah.
And fortunately, in our case, ice cream is not. It's dairy is expensive. However, the compromise of losing a little money versus gaining a repeat customer. So if somebody comes in and says, well, I want a salty pimp, but I don't want any salt on it. At the truck, I always used to say, here's what we're going to do. I am going to make you a salty pimp, and if you don't like it, I'll make you another cone for free, and you won't pay anything. If you like the salty pimp, you have to pay for it. And they always went with my baby.
And
I always won.
I worked on your truck one time.
Yes,
and
at Southern Foodways Alliance.
That was, I say this very truly, that was one of the best afternoons I've ever had.
It's hard work, isn't it, when you start flying?
So hard. We had several hundred people in line. We were giving out cones for free, and the deal was, so people had just been sitting in these talks that were really pretty emotional. Ben Mims wrote,
He's coming out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's at the LA Times now, but he'd been at, I think it was at Saveur.
He is? Well, no wonder I never see him in Washington Heights anymore.
Yeah, because he moved to LA.
He used to live a couple blocks away.
Oh yeah, he's doing great stuff at the LA Times. But I think when he was at Saveur, he wrote about this particular Southern cake that they were eating when he came out to his family, and he got rejected in a lot of ways. But it's still a connection to his family, eating this thing. And then there was a documentary about Bill Smith, who was this incredible chef in the South. Actually, it was about Bill Neal and Bill Smith, two gay chefs who had been at Crook's Corner in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So not a dry eye in the house. It was super emotional, and everybody gets to come outside to the truck and have ice cream. And I think you had fallen in a hole.
Oh yeah, I was John Currents.
Yes.
Currents. I was walking from, we were we had the ice cream truck the night before at one of his restaurants.
A snack bar, I
and
think.
his commissary was like 2 blocks away. And we had gotten a bottle of Jack Daniels and we were drinking it while we worked. And as one does. And I had to run back to the commissary to get whipped cream. And I stepped in the dark into an open...
It was a culvert.
Yeah, it was something that should have been covered, and went down in and some sort of horrible torsion happened on my knee. And that night I ended up at an emergency room even.
Yeah.
And so the next day we did our event, and I never felt any pain. I've never felt pain when I'm making ice cream. Like I go into a place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a knee brace on and I'd been at the hospital the night before.
I didn't know. You sort of said like, oh, something happened, but you didn't tell me what it was. And you just said, you're working the truck. And I said, okay.
It's funny because actually in my case, having a second person on the truck really hurts, even if they know what they're doing.
Yeah. There's not a lot of space.
There's not a lot of space. And to go into that place that I used to have to go to make 800 cones in 4 hours or whatever at events. I told my shrink about this one time. I said, I would lose time. During this. It just went by. I never wanted to stop. I could keep on going.
I was in this euphoric state that day.
My shrink said it's called flow, FLOW, not FLO, the waitress, and it's the mental state that marathoners go into where they're no longer running.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is unfathomable to me, but I kind of get it.
Yeah.
There's no way you can run that many miles when you, in your head, are running that many miles. They hit that place and they run. So at that day, we worked our butts off, and 15 minutes after it was over, I was screaming. That's, I think, when I went to the hospital.
Right. Yeah. Because I think before you were just sort of gritting and doing it.
Yeah. No, that's what happened. I remember now. I hadn't gone to the hospital yet because I worked the truck the morning and that afternoon, and there was no pain during it.
I just remember it was so emotionally intense because like the fact that you asked me to do that, I took it really seriously. And so you did your best. You worked the window and you actually had the duration of engagement down right, which is you want everyone to connect with you, but you also need them to get the hell away so you can serve the next person. And now I wanted each person to have a very present moment in this, and I'd be like, are you ready to have the biggest, gayest day ever? Wow. And I needed them to, and I got into the state of engagement with each different person, and they were there and they were present, and there was one person who didn't want the cone, they wanted to, and I was trying to smile my way around that, and everybody was like, you're holding up. I had to remake it like 3 times, and other people were taking it, but people had to take what they were given. They couldn't order.
Oh, that's right. I think there were 2 different ones that we made, something like that.
Yeah, you were doing the olive oil one, and you were doing some chocolate ones. You were doing some twists, and
it was either plain cone or salty pimp or sprinkle cone or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember I was so. The adrenaline kicked in, and I got into this crazy space, and I was also in a sort of funny space. I had just left CNN. I was about to start Tasting Table, so I was in this like weird liminal like kind of thing. But I thought it was such an emotionally powerful thing, and also everybody's in the mood to be given free ice cream. That was so it felt like a gift to get to do that.
That was a good part of doing giant festivals the people really wanted to be there, and they really, for the most part, really wanted to enjoy food.
Yeah.
There are people who go to hyped places and they go there to hate it.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be that. And we still get people who say it's not real ice cream, it's soft serve and things like that, which is they're the same thing. They're different ratios of stuff in it, but
and the thing is, the thing I know about you too is you are so careful about your ingredients.
Yeah, the tricky part about having an ice cream shop that dresses up soft serve, you assume that an ice cream shop, all you have to do to work there is know how to reach in and scoop something, essentially.
Yeah.
And at our place, everyone has to be trained how to make every cone, and that's tricky. To make sure that everyone knows how to make a salty pimp correctly is, whereas if they scooped it, I would always be assured of the base quality of it, you know.
Right.
So by having the right ingredients, hopefully you get that much closer to duplicating the same thing every time, and having it work, not having oil separate out on you because you're putting dulce de leche into like chocolate dip with oil. Just, yeah. People will come in to rag on you. I mean, people are on, well, not the Yelp so much anymore, but people used to be on, ready to write their review while they were in line to get the product. So,
and how much of it were they reviewing concept versus product?
The most of the poor comments were that it was not. Like it was like they thought they were going to a noodle place and they got a steak, that kind of thing, you know. and I can't believe I came all the way from California and it was just soft serve. I'm like, well, the thing we're known for is some of the best soft serve in the world. That's the thing that we do.
It's really good stuff.
So I can't apologize for the fact that that's the whole mission of our menu.
Yes. And if they had done their research, how would they?
How would you even know? Oh, the other thing that this is off, but people who come in drunk at 12:10 and try to get in the door. Well, it's just one more, man.
But you have to clean up the line.
Or I came from Australia. How can you be closed already? Like, well, you came all the way from Australia and had the address. Why didn't you check the time? Oh, Lord, people.
And I imagine if you're working with these particular machines, you have to clean out the lines and you have to...
Yeah, actually, we just had a cleaning seminar with the staff on Tuesday. So
yeah, there's... I mean, self-serve's complicated.
Maintaining the machinery is tricky. You know, different... One of the brands of soft-serve machines, popular ones, is such a pain in the butt to take care of. That's why it's their brand that's in McDonald's. And they're great machines, don't get me wrong, but they're hard to train on, and that's why they end up being down a lot, because soft serve machines are tricky to take care of.
Because there is that joke about like, the soft serve machines.
Yeah. There's always this running thing about how you really can't get the stuff at McDonald's. So where was I going with this? Yeah, I mean, with scooped ice cream, it would probably be made off in a commissary somewhere.
Yeah.
In a giant batch freezer, continuous freezer, and put into buckets and hearted and brought to us, where the only thing the staff would have to worry about is getting it into the cabinet in time for it to be the right temperature to scoop. Because you like to store ice cream at maybe 20 below, and you scoop it around 14 above. So you got to let it temper to give you the right scoop. That's kind of it, for a scoop shop. For us, you have to know the machinery, because soft serve is frozen at the point of it's frozen where it's dispensed or served. In the bottom or top of the machine, there's a tank where you put liquid mix. It's pumped up into the freezing chamber, which is just looks has a dasher blade, and air is forced in along the way, because ice cream is whipped to have air in it. That's why it's fluffy. And then it's frozen just before it comes out of the nozzle. It's liquid until it's, a minute before being served, something like that. And you have to know the parts of the machine, and everyone has to have basic knowledge behind it, which is something that I've really been bad about lately, because when I got into ice cream and ended up realizing it was going to be what I would do for the foreseeable future,
you're all in, babe.
and that meant I suddenly had to learn about the machinery and about ice cream, and I just come out of doing all this research work.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to that moment where
really synced up well, because if I'm going to do something, I like to know all about it.
Yeah.
And in working on the doctorate and working towards the comprehensives, like in such a broad way, I had to know everything I could about music. So that winter, I decided, well, I guess I really better learn about machinery and what goes in ice cream.
So you weren't just going to go and work on a truck. You decided you were going to have your own.
Well,
how'd that happen? You're looking for weird jobs on Craigslist.
I was looking for weird jobs, and my fantasy job, which I'm pretty sure doesn't exist, would be to go into the A train tracks and shoot rats with a .22.
There is have you ever seen the rat vac?
No.
Oh God, yes, it is an actual vehicle goes along the tracks, and they have a vacuum, and they vacuum up rats. I've seen it on the street before, the rat vac.
What do they make out of them?
I don't know. I actually walked past a couple of MTA.
Because if they're not repurposing them, it's why bother?
I know, like recycle, reuse, upcycle. Like, but I actually walked past 2 MTA workers once, and they had found I can't ever remember if it's Rat King or King Rat, but they said that they had found one in the tunnel. You know, those rats that they live so closely together, their tails like form a knot.
No, I don't know.
It's it's gonna haunt your dreams now. I'm really, really sorry about that. It's a thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Do we need to take a moment? Do we need to meditate?
That's why you need a 22. I don't want to tase that thing. I want it gone.
Yeah. So it's, but no, they get vacuumed up, is so far as I understand.
I don't even like vacuuming out spiders. I'd rather step on them than vacuum them up. Not live.
I run into a lot of, we have a place upstate. We try to release them to the outdoors as much as we can.
Man. And unless they're immediately euthanized upon getting vacuumed up, then that's pretty rude.
I assume. I mean, I'm just going with, maybe the MTA wants to fact check me on this, but yeah, there's a lot that happens in the tunnels. How would you be okay in the tunnels?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I would love to be
being
in the tunnels.
dirty, being
Have
like.
you seen the Joker movie yet?
No.
There's a scene in there where something major happens on a subway platform.
Oh, I've read about that.
Yeah, and it's the it's the one train platform at 92nd Street.
Okay.
Which you can see if you look out the window when you go by it. You can see this abandoned station, and you know, there's the station under City Hall that you can't get to anymore unless you're on a train.
I love those
around.
ghost stations.
I love that stuff. There's the A train has a stop that's closed at like 19th Street.
Yeah, they're really these like this sort of underground New York abandoned stuff.
I would love to be able to live on. No, I wouldn't want to live there, but I did read a book by a guy who lived under Grand Central for a while, and yeah, that was tough.
That would not be easy. No.
And, you know, there's turf wars under there.
Yeah, no, it's a serious.
Do you know about the elevator under the platform under the Waldorf-Astoria?
No.
Teddy Roosevelt, when he used to come to town, would come by train. And, you know, no, FDR, sorry. When FDR came to town, it was always by train, and they built a special extension for one of the trains that goes under the Waldorf-Astoria. And it was so he could get off the train and get up to his room without people seeing him in a wheelchair. And that platform is still down there. There's a gold door on the side of the Waldorf-Astoria. It doesn't say anything on it. And it's the door to go down to the tracks. And Warhol used to have parties down there on this abandoned platform. You can't get to it anymore. But yeah, way under the Waldorf-Astoria is FDR's private train platform.
Dear God. But so they're not, Craigslist is not advertising for jobs on the platform.
I didn't find any jobs killing rats. And then, you know, I logged on to Facebook, and a friend had a status message that said, if any of you want to drive an ice cream truck this summer, get in touch with me. And this friend, Andrea Fisher, is somebody who went to Juilliard, and a flutist, plays the organ. She actually does stuff where she plays the organ pedals and plays the flute. She's phenomenally talented. Wow. And one of her great talents is hustling up money. You know, whether she needs backers or whatever, she makes money happen around her. And she'd been working an ice cream truck for a couple of summers.
Like just somebody else's ice cream truck.
Yeah. And the Times did a thing on her, you know, just the fact that she's this beautiful woman on an ice cream truck who runs off to play the organ on Sunday. And you know, it's fascinating. Yeah. So I talked to her about it, and it turns out that in the city there are some independent ice cream truck operators, but mostly the trucks are owned by you know, a person who has multiple vehicles. Yeah. And multiple permits. So she was working with a guy who had something like 8 trucks.
Okay.
And basically it was day labor. I would go there. If they knew I was coming, I would be assigned a truck. There was a list with who was taking what truck that day, and you gave a cut to them, and or you took your cut. So there was no upfront cost.
And a route map? Or?
No, trucks in New York City, in the Manhattan, don't do routes.
Okay.
There was basically they had declared spots. They took their spots, and their techniques for taking spots and insisting on spots
Yeah.
were rough.
Yeah, because you were talking about turf wars down in the subways. I'm sure there's got to be.
Wait, have you never read the Times, all the police stuff that's happened with the ice cream trucks in New York?
So walk us through that, because it's really intense, and what street vendors are against, what trucks are against.
Well, the soft serve thing is really ridiculous. So the guys that I worked with they took over Midtown, except for a couple of other trucks. They took their spots and they drove everyone out. And sometimes, it involved baseball bats and following people around.
That's what I wanted to get to, because it's tough business.
It took a little bit to realize that I was driving an ice cream truck, but working in a really it was a dubious scene.
Yeah.
It took a long time for me. I still am learning how dubious it was. They always said, well, we pay your tickets, don't worry about it. And last summer or earlier this year, they were finally shut down by the state of New York. And they had been transferring the titles on trucks all over the place. They had something like 120 LLCs and shell companies. And they were just spinning. I can't imagine how they kept track of this stuff. But they had something like $6 million in unpaid tickets, something like that.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Scofflaw.
So, yeah,
to the
crazy
end.
time. So that's where I learned what I was working with. So back to the route question, in Manhattan, you go to where your day spot and your night spot, essentially, And when I started working for them, they said, well, here's some spots that are open. What do you think is going to work for you? And luckily, one of them was Broadway and 17th at the corner of Union Square. And I thought,
I remember that.
I thought, okay, well, if anything's going to work, it'll be around there, because it's sort of the dividing line between uptown and downtown, and and the green market, and the people there have, I think, an interesting open idea about eating stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not making that point clear, but so they had basically bullied this spot, and if I showed up there and somebody else had taken it, I would call them. And they would put in a call, and the person would be gone in minutes.
Gone in what way?
They would drive off. I would double park and call my guys, and he would call their guys, and they would call him. And my guys were the scariest, apparently.
Whoa.
So that's how it worked in Manhattan, especially with Big Gay Ice Cream Truck. Ice cream trucks aren't built. You've been in one, and as you said, it's cramped, and they're not built. There's just not a lot of space. And so I had all the regular ice cream truck toppings plus another, 4 bins and then sauce bottles and all this stuff. So for me, packing up and moving would require, a half hour on each end to pack it up, clean it, go to another spot, reopen it. So I just stayed at Union Square all day. You don't drive around, and Big Gay Ice Cream Truck never drove around.
Yeah.
The guys up in the Bronx, drove from Ballfield to but not me.
Yeah, Brooklyn, we definitely get the drive-by trucks.
Yeah, in Queens, in all the boroughs, but not in Manhattan. People don't.
And that's also a lot of prepackaged treats, as opposed to, I guess there's some soft serve, but there are also a lot of Choco Tacos and things like that.
Yeah, and SpongeBob, things
A
like
lot
that.
of blurry SpongeBobs, yes.
They're always smeared. And it's funny, in Australia, have you ever had Golden Gay Time treats?
Oh, I've seen them. I've never been to Australia, but I've heard.
They make really, really great, prepackaged ice cream over there.
Golden Gay Time.
Golden Gay Time. And somebody just sent me a direct message that said, hey, do you know about this brand? They're jacking your style and you ought to get on them. And I wrote back and I said, actually, they've been around a long time and I worship them.
Yeah.
The fact that they're called Golden Gay Time is awesome, because they were, their name comes from we're having a gay old time sort of thing. And, people assume it's completely different now. And it's sort of like people assume Big Gay Ice Cream Truck has to be
South Park.
pro agenda, have an agenda, something like that. And there you go. We don't have an agenda, and I parked at Union Square in 17th.
But so at that point, was it Big Gay Ice Cream, or was
it was always Big Gay Ice Cream. So back to Andrea. She had this guy who had multiple ice cream trucks, and I remember turning to Brian and saying, "Here's one. I could drive an ice cream truck next summer and work with Andrea." And Brian was like, "Yeah, you have to do that, because how many people have the opportunity to have an ice cream truck?" And I wanted to do something that involved New Yorkers.
Yeah.
And the idea of working on the street in New York City was so terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea that somebody could just put a gun in my face through the window or whatever. So yeah, the terror aspect really brought me into it.
So, I mean, you wanted to lean into terror. You liked it.
I wanted to be on the edge of something.
Yeah.
And
have you always been like that?
I'll talk to anyone about anything.
Okay. I like that about you very much.
So sometimes that brings you into strange places.
Yeah. I remember you wrote a piece for me when I was at CNN Etocracy. We would do this 5 at 5 thing where we'd ask somebody, what is the list that only you can write?
Oh.
And you wrote 5 people who are really better off if we choose the flavor for them.
Oh, right. And one of them was chain smokers, because there was one guy who just pounded cigarettes the whole time he was in line. And I got him into chocolate with cayenne because it was,
Oh, because he could taste it.
Yeah.
Was his name Anthony Bourdain?
Yeah. God. His smoking.
But early adopter of the brand, though.
Yeah. My friend Helen worked as social media.
The lovely Helen Cho.
Helen Cho.
Yeah, she's a magnificent person.
You know it. She worked there and handled his social media, and sort of, I think a lot of it. Okay, let me just tell you how I met Tony and Ottavia. It's because it's so stupid. Brian and I went to Barney's for the book launch of Lee Schrager's South Beach cookbook.
I know the one.
Which was a compilation of chefs that their recipes that he just kind of gathered and blah, 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 blah. So we went to this party, and we really didn't think about the fact that all these chefs who had recipes in there might be there. We were just like, okay, let's go have champagne.
Free booze. Yeah.
And what the first awesome thing that happened was all of this stuff went flying across the floor all of a sudden. And Brian looked down, and it was... what's her name? It was Bethany Frankel.
The Real Housewife?
Yeah. She was trying to gather her lipstick and everything in her compact that had gone flying across the floor when she dropped her purse. So that was like a total win. We should have gone home right then and stopped the night. Bethany Frankel crawling around on the floor. And I saw Tony and Ottavia there. And I had tweeted back and forth with Ottavia a little bit. She worked, I think, as a shift lead or a manager at a restaurant, and the boss there loved the smell of urinal cakes and wanted them placed around
like minty urinal cakes.
Yeah, urinal cakes, and he wanted the place to smell like urinal cakes. Which you don't want a restaurant to smell like anything, really. But
that's the fetish. That's like
you might be right. So she and I sort of engaged over that, and I went up to him. And I really had nothing to say to Tony. And I started having a really in-depth conversation with Ottavia about this urinal cake incident. And
who decides that?
It's
is that really yes?
Yeah. So, I said hello to Tony, but the whole thing was with Ottavia.
Right.
And it was later she started direct messaging me. As I was on my way home. Oh, Tony just realized you wrote a piece about Guy Fieri and he really loved it. We did something for Eater about Guy, and Tony liked it, and that's how we sort of moved up to beginning of a friendship. Anyhow, Helen worked for him.
Yeah.
And when he was doing that show, The Layover.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think was 2 seasons. Helen, we were a really short spot in that. We weren't one of the people who actually interviewed, but they stopped by the truck.
So remember, Eddie Wong was in there.
Yeah, Eddie. Yeah, right. So they did a blow-by, and I think that was mostly because Helen, I think, urged it. And she was the one I had to, set the whole thing up with. So why are we talking about Helen?
Oh, because we were talking about the sort of social media. Well, okay, to retrace.
Thank God you know where I'm going with things.
I did.
I don't have a
pretty
clue.
Good. I'm surprised. I didn't even take my ADHD medication today. I'm impressed with my brain. So we were talking about that you were near Union Square. That you had written the thing about who you should choose their thing. We talked about chain smoking, and then I was saying social media helped launch you.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So I don't know why I started talking about Helen in that case, but...
Because I said that you were talking about chain smokers.
I don't know where Helen came out in this conversation. She has been working for Letterman on his show.
I know. It seems like such a great job for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been amazing to see her go from one thing to a complete different thing.
She really...
She also worked on the show Meat Eater with Stephen Ranella. It's
yeah,
hunting show.
Yeah, because I remember because that was a 0.0
Yeah.
thing. I mean, I want her to become the queen of all media.
Well,
and
you know that she was in a couple of episodes,
I know.
including a bison hunt. I think it was bison.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she. Yeah.
But she made, because I remember that social media moment for you with when the truck was launching and people were really starting to pick up on.
Yeah, you know, in 2009 when
Kate Crater and Kim Severson were writing about you as well.
Well,
I think.
Kim was at our first day.
Okay.
And
she was my guest last week.
So Kim has sort of been, she's so deeply linked with it.
Yeah.
You know, not every step of the way, but from the beginning. She showed up. It was our first day. We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't know how to put the signs that we had on the truck. We had a giant banner that we made. We barely knew how to make an ice cream cone, and Kim was there, and Kim had a good laugh, and she said later, you know, I never expected you guys to even have a second day. And at the end of our second season, we were on Rachel Ray, and Kim was like, this is ridiculous. And she still thinks it's ridiculous, which is, you know, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, she's so happy about the success, but still has no idea why it's successful, which is the same as me. I don't care, and I don't want to analyze it too much. And, you know, that's why I stopped doing the truck for the most part, was because it was going to hit a point where it was no longer a magical thing that happened.
Yeah.
You know, it just came about because of Facebook, and then we had these silly ideas. We wanted to get a Facebook group going for my friends to just kind of follow along. We had no name for it, so we called it Big Gay Ice Cream Truck. And then all these random people started joining it, and we decided that the brand name, you know, there it was. We'd already named it.
And the visuals are so strong.
Well, our logo by Jason O'Malley, you know, people would stop and they would stop at the truck, and we always loved when you would look out and you would see someone go. They would say it out loud. Or to themselves, and they would stand with that logo and take a picture. And that's, you know, 2009 was the zeitgeist of Twitter and food and food trucks. You know, both of those things.
Oh my God, every 5 times a day I did be pitched a food truck story.
Oh.
Where you know, wherever I happened to be working, whether it was AOL, CNN, like just food truck story, because it sort of rolled out through various towns. So we had been inundated in New York for a while, and Atlanta was having a huge moment too. And CNN's based in Atlanta.
Roy Choi, of course.
Yeah, of course.
You know, he really broke down. He broke down something, and you know, Roy is amazing with keeping. Roy has a mission, you know, to bring the certain food to the certain people, and that kind of food never came from food trucks until Roy.
And he's really good at media too.
He's another person who, like, just their soul is the right kind of soul.
Yeah, it is.
Like just like greyhounds.
Yeah, we've been talking about that. We're both dog people, so yeah, and the food. I think the sort of the X factor of you and of him is the food's really good. So you're not just making sloppy, like, soft serve.
You know, I never really thought about that, but in a way, you know, Roy wanted to upgrade the taco truck, a standard concept, and we really wanted to notch up a soft serve truck, which is just a concept that's been around since the 50s. So I never really thought about the fact that, because Roy's a trailblazer, and I don't consider us to be anything like that, because it was a trend. We didn't know there was a food truck trend going on. We just wanted to do something silly. But maybe I should give myself a little more credit for something.
You should, because you were also doing things that were kind of risky, because you weren't just doing, you know, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, and like a cherry on top. You were, I remember thinking, olive oil, that's really interesting. Olive oil and salt. And then you were doing all your other flavors. And then, but it was flavors that the balsamic one. As well, for a while you were doing.
It was balsamic reductions.
That's what it was, and I thought, like, okay, let's see how this is going to go.
I could really go for that right now.
It's such a perfect thing, because I had started to. I remember when Gina De Palma introduced the olive oil gelato at Otto, and that took diners.
That was our inspiration for putting olive oil on ice cream, because you know, brilliant.
It's such a perfect. Well, she got so much pushback at first. People were like, oh, that's weird. And now it's just, people don't bat an eye at it. But I remember trying it, because I think the first then cone I actually had maybe was when I was at CNN, because I think our LGBTQ alliance had some sort of like free cone thing, and you were there. And I remember I brought you a flask of something.
Cognac.
Yeah, to have in the truck, because I thought like,
I had it at home.
and it was really,
alone. Where everyone should try to do their drinking.
it was really hot that day too. And I remember it had like a neoprene sleeve.
Yeah, it had this greenish exoskeleton, or it was like it had a scuba suit on or something like that.
But by that point, it was such an interesting thing, because you had this incredible trajectory, because you had the trucks, and then they started becoming they would be at festivals, they would be at events that weren't necessarily sort of like a gay oriented or LGBTQ or
I mean, I remember the Macy's private 4th of July party where they take a pier out, and we were at the end of a pier, and on the closed side of the truck, it was just us and the water, and we watched the fireworks, basically with 4 friends, and that was how would we what
it was. I remember you doing there was a silent disco, or there was some sort of event that you were doing, and there were a lot of drag queens. Like, you've always had drag queens in the mix, which I've always appreciated. And
yeah, I guess so. Our preference for drag queens is it depends on the character. Like Bertha Mason used to do stuff.
Yes, I remember her.
And his pies are brilliant. And Ari Kiki is the drag queen who was at our opening day at the East Village, who she looks like just Amy Winehouse, bloated and wonderful, and she was running up and down the line and entertaining everyone. I remember at one point she just grabbed someone's kid, like 1-year-old, and she started saying, "Free baby, who wants a baby?" So I don't want someone who's going to come and sing, Ring My Bell or whatever for the millionth time.
Like the sense that
and we actually stopped doing that as much because we were getting too identified with it.
Well, the sensibility around it has always been really fun, because you had people who were not necessarily sort of dressed all sexy and stuff. Like, you had like homemaker drag, kind of thing. And I've always,
that was Bertha Mason,
and I think I was at some other like dessert event or something, and I think she was baking there. But I remember the book is a brilliant thing, and I remember the sensibility of that being like 80s prom, but kind of busted.
Yeah.
And
I
showed up
80s class picture. We decided, I think at the time we were like 5 years old, and we decided that the book, we had the hardest time coming up with a concept, and then suddenly we realized, what? Let's tell our story in 4 chapters, 4 sections, and the 4 sections will mirror the development of our menu. So we'll start strictly with stuff that we put on ice cream, that we love on ice cream. Then we'll get a little bit more tricky. Then we get a little more tricky. And then the final thing, you're actually making ice cream. I always found that ice cream cookbooks were sort of daunting to most people, because they start off...
It's science. I mean,
they start off with how to make a custard base. And I think a lot of people right then and there are like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do something. I didn't want to scare people off at the beginning, so it doesn't even mention that until further in. And also, all the recipes are simple. I mean, I really thought I was going to get a lot of pushback on this or blowback, but I made them almost too easy. Like, I removed steps that you probably want to do, like putting it through a strainer even to get little egg bits. If you make the custard right, you don't get the egg bits, but still, just to cut out. You would never want to serve that in a restaurant, but there's a little teeny bit of it at home.
That's
whatever.
Fun. Yeah.
So kind of oversimplified things, but since it was 4 sections, it was like a yearbook. Freshman class was the easiest stuff, and we wanted to do sections that had all the class photos in it, and so my friend Mary Smith, who used to work at Charm City Cakes, made a laser background for us.
Yeah.
And we asked everyone to come in just dressed 80s, and we got a pile of junk at Goodwill to put people in, and had an open call, 3 days of photography for it. And people just wandered in, and now they're in our book.
Oh, yeah. No, I went there. My hair was very large. That I had just come from a party for the anniversary of Danielle.
I think the biggest hair awards would go to you and to Amanda Freitag, who walked in.
Yes.
Amanda walked in fully blown out and ready to go. And she, it was the middle of the day, and she was just ridiculous with her makeup like spackled on, and her hair huge and scrunchies and stuff. So Yeah, Amanda really pulled it out for that book.
It's such a wonderful book, and the shake recipes in it are pretty terrific as well.
Well, shakes are an easy thing to make, and they're fun. And we used to make them at home as kids, and a lot of people, I guess they only went out to have them. And the shake that we always made, I learned later, is black and white, vanilla ice cream with chocolate syrup.
Yeah.
Which people around here, it kind of is a New York thing to call it a black and white. And a black and white cookie,
Oh, yeah.
Same sort of thing.
Iconic New York.
And I remember somebody tweeting at us saying, I can't believe you use such a racist term for a milkshake. Like, no, it's a standard term. Also, it's black and white. So anyhow, we have a lot of good milkshakes in the book. The curry and
the peanut butter one.
The peanut butter chocolate one is lethal.
Yeah.
And do you want to hear the story behind that one?
I really do.
I've always had Skippy, on our menu, and like to line cones with peanut butter. And a customer came in and said, "You ought to make a shake with chocolate and peanut butter." I thought, yeah, I should screw around with that. And he said, "Well, make me one." And I said, "Well, here's the deal. I'm going to go make one. You're going to have it, and if you don't like it, you're not going to say a word to anyone about having a crappy shake. And if I like it, I get to never tell anyone that you came up with the idea." And he was like, fine. And I handed it to him without trying, and he looked at me and said, "You better try this." And I took a spoonful out of his shake and was like, okay, well, look back at the dirty measuring cup. I think it was a third cup of peanut butter, because write this down. And so it was entirely his idea. We got the ratio right on the first try. And it's so evil
good.
because you can see fat like glistening on it.
Oh, yeah.
It's toxic. Like, it was the one that we always joked about, having people sign a release and buy 10, get one free angioplasty. It's rough.
It's delicious as hell, though. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It's funny when people ask, "Can you come in and do a milkshake demo and do this shake?" And like, a milkshake demo takes like 35 seconds.
Yeah, I had you do one, which is why.
Yeah, and it's always like, well, how can you go back and do it a lot slower or something?
Like, no, it's just like, it's put it together. But
the faster you make a milkshake, well, when you make a milkshake, the weak blender is the best one to use.
Really?
Because if you try to make one in a Vitamix,
it'll heat?
Vitamix are amazing, but they're built really for pulverizing.
Okay.
So you want a milkshake to still have ice cream in it and not be a chocolate milkshake needs chocolate ice cream in it, suspended. It shouldn't be chocolate milk. So if you have a blender that just is, meant to bash vegetables, you're going to demolish the structure of the ice cream.
So is that why there are those specific like milkshake machines, like that you see in like throwback places, like with the metal cup?
Yeah, and they aerate.
Oh.
They whip in a lot of air. But then you can also have ones that just destroy it. A blender that's meant to murder what's in it is not a great one to make a milkshake.
That's dark.
I have I collect vintage appliances and small appliances, and I have a bunch of milkshakes, and the oldest ones are the best ones for shakes.
I think, and they're pretty too. Like,
I love them.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of mixers too, including one. I put a photo of it on my private Instagram feed, just saying, I can't find anything about this mixer. Does anyone know anything? And people found it online, and this mixer came with an extra beater. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Put it to the side, and it turned out it's a 3-beater mixer. Never heard of such a thing?
No.
It's three blades in line that all spin linked up with each other.
How whippy does that get?
I've actually not tried it because I need to, but it seems to me it's so violent. It's like it could drill to the core of the earth.
Like, how much meringue are you making? How much?
That's the thing. I do need to make meringue in it because I wonder if it's like 10 seconds.
Oh my God. I think you need to put that on Instagram when you do that.
I should. I put it on, my private one. Everyone. I tried it. I looked under the thing. I realized you can put a 3rd beater in there, and like I said, core of the earth. And you crank it up, and it goes. I can't imagine that you could make much in it because it seems like it would destroy it like at the molecular level.
So you have to try this.
I got to try it. I got to figure out the right thing to put in it.
So we've been talking about soft serve and milkshake, but I really want to talk about how you got into the pint business and what that's been like. Because I have to say, it's really emotional for me every time I go into a grocery store and I see your pints.
We've actually, a company found us, a little company who likes to develop likes to take food places to a next notch, and they were connected with sales system and distribution, and we thought, okay, let's do this, and that was sort of it. And it turned out that it sold to more places than we thought it would sell, and it's still selling.
Can you say how many outlets it's in?
Well, I mean, it's in like 750 Wawas. So.
Oh, wow. I found it at CVS before.
Yeah. And of course, it's one of those things. It's one of those areas where you end up spending money to make money.
Yeah.
But having it in stores, it's ridiculous.
That's
and
beautiful.
In the second year, when it made it to Maine, I can't talk about it.
That's where you're from. Who found it there? Who was the person who found the pint in there?
I knew it had gone in, and a couple of people had sent me photos, and my sister sent me a photo of her with the pints.
Oh, my God.
And I had to go lean on a wall at Broadway and 207 and cry.
That's huge. I mean, when you posted about that, I started crying. That's...
The whole idea that I had left Central Maine, I had to get out, I dropped out and moved to New York because I just didn't fit there. And
I know that feeling.
And then for the ice cream to then go there on its own?
Yeah. And the thing is, some kid is going to see that on the freezer shelf like it's no big deal, and that's going to be I
had a guy write to me who said, I was 4 years behind you in high school or something like that, and I was so mean to you, and I hope this apology means something. I just have to write to you to get it off my chest. And of course, so many people were mean to me that I have no idea who he was. And I appreciate the apology. It's very nice, but the whole thing means something to people.
It does. It really does. I mean, can you imagine, like, you're that kid in that little town, and that maybe hasn't quite caught up with some things, and you see that just in the freezer, like it's just normalized.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And we never talk about. We don't have an agenda, and we try to be vocal about that.
Yeah.
So when people try to place it on us, it is kind of humorous. Like I said earlier, before we started taping, I actually had Westboro Baptist Church tweeting at me. The God hates people, and they said this was when in the Pacific Northwest there was a baker who wouldn't make. They were fundamentalists and wouldn't make a cake for a gay couple's wedding.
Yeah.
You remember this thing?
Yeah.
And it was in the midst of all that, and they said, hey, Big Gay Ice Cream, will you make us a giant God Hates Fags cake, ice cream cake, for a float and in a parade or something like that? And I wrote back, absolutely, it'll cost $80,000, and I'm going to donate it all to human rights.
Yeah.
And they never responded. And I was like, I just won a thing with, I just beat Westboro Baptist Church.
They get no ice cream.
I would have sold them a ton. They could have all they want, and it would all go to somebody who would fight against them.
Yeah.
And I guess I nailed that one on the first tweet back.
That's really good. And you were telling me that they're actually a pretty small organization. They're just really loud.
Yeah. They when they picketed my alma mater, Juilliard.
Wait, what? Because of you?
No, because I guess it's a den of homosexuality encouragement or something.
All the best places are.
I got a story about that in a second, but they sent like 4 people. So it's 4 people standing out there with their signs and stuff, and that's when I found out that really there's a very small core membership of Westboro Baptist. They all just show up everywhere. And wait,
they're frequent
Westboro
flyer
Baptist
miles.
Church and signs, and I had a good place to go with that.
Oh, we were talking about the pints being in places,
But it
and
was
you're saying like the
somewhere else. I'm all over the map.
It's okay, but and your ice cream is too.
How do we jump to God Hates Fags?
I think that's just where your mind was going. But we were talking about the pints being in there,
Something
and
to
like
do with high school.
Like having it out there and not being political.
Oh yeah, and we don't like to tell people what. I love it when people would tweet something about big gay agenda. Brian, there's a particular guy who is insistent that there's a big gay agenda. Just like people who insist there's deep state conspiracies and shit like that. And I remember writing to him and saying something like, I wanted him to know that we'd had a meeting and there were some additional items put on the big gay agenda. And he ended up blocking me, which is another thing. And we rarely engage with stuff like that. But that one was just too fun to pick up. The big gay agenda is like, what it was. When Big Gay Ice Cream Truck came along, we named it the Facebook group that because it kind of sounded like we were queer-eyeing it.
Yeah.
And so I made the big gay agenda into, things like that.
I love that. Well, since we're talking about names,
the big gay agenda.
You may or may not want to talk about this, but you got pushed back for the name Salty Pimp.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No.
All right.
That is a thing where people jump to conclusions. I will talk about it. Here we go. When we made Salty Pimp for the first time, it was the most complicated thing that we made. And
what is the makeup of it?
It's vanilla ice cream. We put dulce de leche in the cone and salt it. Then it's vanilla ice cream that we put on the outside, put dulce de leche on the outside. Then we take a squeeze bottle and inject it into the ice cream. Then it all gets salted and dipped in chocolate dip. And I'm still really proud of that cone. Basically, that was the beginning of us demolishing soft serve and rebuilding it.
It's like a triple axle.
Yeah. I mean, there are other things now that we do that are probably more complicated. But anyhow, it was still while Pimp My Ride was on MTV.
Oh, yeah.
And we thought, this cone's pimped out. It's the most complicated thing we do. And we named it Salty Pimp. And that was that. And it just fell out of my mouth, and we named it that. And it was that's all, Pimp My Ride. I think Missy Elliott showed her car in it, and it had in the trunk an elevator, a rack that came up full of her shoes, like all different sneakers. So, a lot of people just laughed at it and got the joke. Some people took it as an endorsement of actual pimps. And that was so far from being the case that it seemed hilarious. But, it's taking something where it just wasn't meant to go. And I can understand how it got there, but it's so far from the spirit of what it meant to the actual name that it's sort of upsetting that,
I tend to think of the ethos of your business as being like, pro sex worker, pro drag queen, pro anything, pro hoop.
Well, I wouldn't say it's in particular pro anyone, but working on the streets those first couple of years,
you probably got to know a lot.
You had customers who were everything, and that was one of the first times I'm not consistent about this, but there were definitely times where I had to consider my pronouns very carefully.
Yeah.
And that was the first time in my life where that happened. And people would actually notice it and appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And for someone to come to the truck who was transitioning and for me to see it and call it down the middle, mm-hmm. it was a big thing for them.
It's a respect that should be commonplace, but isn't quite yet.
It was an effort to make the truck, to make all customers a level playing field.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. As long as you were paying, I was going to earn my $3.50 with you. And,
yeah.
And we did. There were people who worked the streets who came to the truck.
Yeah.
So we try to just be pro NYC, really, in a way.
Yeah.
Because Big Gay Ice Cream Truck would never have happened anywhere else.
No.
Nowhere else.
And it's had, what I like about the pints also is because there's a footprint outside of New York now, and I think that's a really special thing. And the concept behind each one is really special. I mean, the fact that there's like a Neil Gaiman flavor.
Yeah, it is funny that cone. I had been sort of chatting back and forth with Amanda Palmer, I think, and Neil tweeted back at us. And of course, Neil, whenever he tweets anything, even if it's a closed tweet where he's tweeting at somebody, his followers are rabid and they're very fun.
Yeah.
And Amanda's, at the time at least, were the same. Like, people who followed Amanda either followed her because they loved her or they were just there to piss her off. People who follow Neil, all of them love him.
Yeah.
So I got word through, we had a girl who was working near us who was doing merch for Dresden Dolls.
Oh, I love Dresden Dolls.
Amanda's band. And so they somehow got Neil to come to the truck. So Brian and I got this text that said, Neil's going to be there in about 45 minutes. We were like, oh, what? And we thought, we got to do a cone for him. Oh, how do we do this? And Brian ran over to Union Square Market, Green Market, and he bought, there's a company there who sells pretzels. And he bought up a bag of bashed pretzel bits. And he brought them back and said, do something with those. So I took them and I bashed them into the soft serve. Like I demolished this cone and then sort of reshaped it and dipped it. And no, we didn't dip it. Yeah, we dipped it. It's got dip on it. And Neil had the first bite of the first American globs. Like it was like the chocolate peanut butter milkshake when something just happened and it was the right thing. So I named it American Globs after American gods, with his full blessing. And to have made this jokey cone for Neil and to have named it that on a whim and for it to be in grocery stores. And I think it's fantastic.
It's a great ice cream.
How does that happen?
It is so delicious.
I wrote to Daniel Handler a couple of weeks ago and said, I really want to do lemony Snickers. Oh. And I can't. There's no way I'm going to do this without your blessing.
Yeah.
And he wrote back, when you do it, go for it. He said, just don't market it towards kids. I don't want anything that. Yeah. And so somewhere the lemony Snickers is waiting to happen.
Did B. Arthur ever get a B. Arthur?
No, she was dead.
By the time you started.
Yeah.
Oh, for some reason I thought
it's called Dorothy now. But yes. And that cone is dulce de leche and Nilla wafers, and
it's
it was
a really lovely cone.
That was an early cone, and we called it the BuzzFeed because BuzzFeed ran a picture of it, and we had no name for it. And then B. Arthur, at the end of our first summer, or maybe in the middle, B. Arthur's will was read, and she left a bunch of money to Allie Forney Center, which is for LGBTQ displaced youth. And we thought, you know what? This is golden. The crumbs fall off of it, kind of like those long trains she wore on her outfits on Maude.
Yes.
And let's call it B. Arthur. And that was that. We ended up renaming it Dorothy, to get permission to use her name.
Yeah.
It was onerous, and we actually tried to get a movement going to get her a star on the Walk of Fame.
Yes.
And
does she not have one?
No. It's absurd.
Let's fix this.
Well, we tried to. You have to. If it's a star who's deceased, you have to get the family's permission to start the application process, and we couldn't find people who were related to her. Even the people at Allie Forney who had the will only knew so much, and so we had to abandon this idea to lead the initiative to get her a Walk of Fame star. So we renamed it Dorothy, and the logic behind that was if you heard people say, "Are you a friend of Dorothy?"
Yes.
That.
Yeah.
It's sort of Mattachine era slang, asking somebody if they're gay is, "Are you a friend of Dorothy?" And that sort of stems from Dorothy Gale, Wizard of Oz. And we thought, you know what? And it's also her character, B. Arthur's character on The Golden Girls was Dorothy. So a lot of reasons things came together, and it renamed itself, really.
I'm just holding out for the Mindy cone. Needs to happen.
Well, for Maureen McCormick's birthday, we did Marsha Marshmallow Sundae, which is just so cheap of us. But
that's what I love about you. You're both cheap and classy at the same time.
God. We had Oliver Day one day.
Really, cousin Oliver?
Yes. I got Robbie Rist to endorse the thing as Oliver Day and said, if anyone named Oliver comes in, you eat for free. It's Oliver Day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and we got pictures of fucking cousin Oliver with our ice cream.
Oh my God. So,
I can't believe we did that.
That makes me really, really happy.
It's so dumb.
So what is the next thing? You have the pints. You have brick and mortar stores.
It's sort of more of the same.
Yeah.
But to really ramp up availability.
The sandwiches are...
You like our sandwiches?
I love the sandwiches.
Those, for a long time, we sold sandwiches from Melt Bakery, which they're great ice cream sandwiches. Julian really knows what he's doing. So we had somebody else's ice cream sandwiches on our menu. We also carry Fanny's Pops, her Palettas, in New Yorkina. Fine. And we never really found the right sort of manifesto or raison d'etre to have our own ice cream sandwiches because, lemon verbena ice cream with, a certain shortbread, it wasn't us, Everything seemed too upscale. And finally, we thought, well, on ice cream trucks, we made those ice cream sandwiches with the chocolate wafer cookies. Maybe we need to update those the same way we updated the cones and stay within that sort of basic model of, wafer cookie chocolate, vanilla ice cream in the middle or whatever, and then ramp those up somehow. But they're so fun.
They're so good.
And they fit us.
Yeah, they really do.
So I'm proud of that. We added those a couple of years ago.
So yeah, more.
I want to play on shakes. I want to start doing. I want to take Dairy Queen mix-ins and find a new way to elevate those.
I want this. And I just want more big gay ubiquity across.
We had a New York City food and wine event this weekend, and it was an ice cream social for kids, hosted by Duff, and I decided to do ice cream with sour warheads in it, and every single kid loved it, and half of the adults were just disgusted by it. And I thought, we nailed it, That's amazing. It was so good. But, we could do milkshakes with that sort of thing. And I don't want to give more away.
I love
That's too much.
So, Doug Quint.
Yeah.
This is the Oprah part of things.
Where I get something under my seat, a gift?
Yes, you're sitting on it, baby.
Or we do lines from Color Purple?
Whatever you want to do. But she was a big proponent of The Secret and putting out into the universe, manifesting the thing you want. Ideally saying it out loud so other people can help you get to whatever this is. What is the thing you want for yourself, the selfish thing?
A lot of land. Yeah. To be someplace where I can own a lot of land.
Yeah.
And, to know that I'm surrounded by all my own land.
That's really great. I know where you can get some.
Yeah. Well, we're moving to Maine shortly.
Oh.
My husband and I live in sort of a weird place in Illinois, which was where he could get a job. And I thought, I've never lived anywhere but Maine or New York City. So I got hit by a car and thought, that's it, I'm done. And I told my shrink, I think my paranoia level is just off the charts now because I worry about a sarin gas attack in the subways, or a van jumping on the sidewalk and demolishing me, or a pressure cooker nail bomb going off in my face. And I said, I'm just getting so paranoid about walking down the street. And my therapist said, those are all justifiable fears. You're not being paranoid.
That's what happens in New York.
Yeah, and maybe you shouldn't live here.
Yeah.
And,
my therapist is never that blunt.
My therapist also said, I was telling her how hard it was for my husband to get post-surgical pain meds. They just wanted him to go ice, and he'd had his knee ripped open. And she said to me, I tell my patients, and this is a strange thing to say, but I tell patients if they have more pain meds, extra pain meds after a procedure, hoard them. Because someday you're going to need them and a doctor won't prescribe them, that's the state of opioids in this country, where people who post-surgical is a completely legitimate use of narcotics. You've been ripped open. But the fact that they've gone so much the other way with fentanyl and everything, now you can't get them when you should. And I see them as a tool. And it was really, really hard to watch him in all this pain because he couldn't get them. But anyway, I want he and I to be surrounded by our own land.
I want that for you. Yeah. Let us dream this into action.
Yeah, we're working on it.
So I have 5 questions that are pretty rapid fire. Okay. You ready for that? This is not I heard you on Carb Face with the questions.
Oh,
so you did a beautiful.
Lori.
I think you called me a whore or something like that. It's fine. You called me a bitch. That's what it was.
No, I called Dana Cowan a bitch. I said something about It was
with love, people.
Yeah, the one with Dana, it's like, that's like saying that Dana Cowan's a bitch. It's not.
It's like
kicking
a puppy.
So far off from the truth.
She is such a lovely, twinkly, beautiful human.
Dana Cowan, what a whore.
Oh my God. We're gonna release a soundbite from it, and that's gonna be Jesus Christ. And I yes, and it was something. This will not be like that. Yeah. What's your comfort food?
Oh, Nutter Butters.
Any particular amount, sequence?
The whole thing. Whatever package it is, the whole thing. I have broken up Nutter Butters and put them in a bowl with milk over them. They don't hold together that well. So
I know exactly that mush because when you dip it in the milk,
they go quick. I've also done that with those little white donuts with the powdered sugar, the little donuts with powdered sugar on them, that are like from Entenmann's or something.
Yeah, I love those.
I have broken those up and put them into a bowl. I think I've broken out of that sort of. Well, I know I have, but I really have been addicted to sugar before, addicted to sugar, and eating bowls of donuts was sort of like hitting rock bottom.
I'm picturing you just sitting there like.
One time I had a craving in the middle of the night, and I was like, I have to have something. This is ridiculous. And I got in the fridge, and the only thing I had were frozen pie crusts, really. Oh, they weren't frozen. They were in the fridge. And I took a bunch of butter and drizzled it on this pie crust and then just dumped as much brown sugar as I could and rolled it and baked it and ate the whole thing and passed out.
Oh, my God.
Like, really, really bad sugar problems. So,
are you better now?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I think the older you get, the harder time you have with metabolizing certain things, and sugar's one of them.
Oh, my God.
And if you combine sugar and dairy, which is what I do for a living,
right.
I have to be careful about the amount I ingest. So, when it comes to ice cream, I am a taster.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Do you know how to taste ice cream?
Put your lips together and blow?
No, if you're doing a sampling?
How?
You need water that's room temperature or about body temperature and unsalted saltines. And after each bite of ice cream or after each flavor, first you have this saltine and chew it, and it scrapes the fat that's coated your mouth up. So it scrapes that fat off, and then you rinse with body temperature water because you want your palate to be the same temperature for each kind you're trying. Otherwise, if your mouth gets more and more coated and your palate gets more and more cold, at the end everything's going to be tasteless. You're not coming at it with the same palate as when you start.
Who knew?
Yeah, I had to be taught that by a flavor scientist.
Oh my God.
I want to be a flavor scientist.
I know. I want the flavor scientist with a lot of land.
My friend Kirsten Schmoller, I can't remember how to pronounce her last name because it's really tricky spelling, but she used to be like a lead flavor scientist at Ben & Jerry's. And the fact that when they say scientist, they are scientists.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they know, food on a molecular level, and it's fascinating.
You will build that on your land, this lab.
I'll let somebody else build a meth lab on the back, that kind of thing.
So what is the last meal that you had that made you emotional? I know you and I both have emotions at the drop of a hanky, but...
For food, that's hard to say, but with me, for sure, the more I'm enjoying something, the slower I eat it.
Yeah.
I'm a fast eater. I've tried to break out of that, but if I'm really, really eating slow, that I'm savoring each bite, and that can end up being sort of emotional. Like eating at Le Bernardin or actually Dale Taldy's stuff.
Oh, I love his food.
These people have such a encyclopedic knowledge of flavor and what you can do with it that it's almost I don't want to say religious experience because that's not it, but it's
sensual.
It's just proof that there's genius out there.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And it's not something that that people develop. They do develop it, but genius comes from a place where you're ready to accept it.
Yeah. No.
You're ready to let it happen in your head, and to go to Le Bernardin and to have 2 ingredients on there, but this fish is exactly the right fish from the right place, and it's sliced exactly the right way to give you this sort of thing in your palate, and there's the right sort of tamari on it. Like, how does Eric know how each sauce is going to, how does he know to combine these things? It's like asking, how does Bach know to combine this melody with this counterpoint? It's because they have something that happens, or they allow to happen to them, that the rest of us mortals don't channel.
Yeah.
How did Beethoven write the Sixth Symphony when he was deaf? Things like that. It's because somehow it passed through them. And I think that there are some chefs out there with that sort of caliber genius.
I fully agree. I do.
Le Bernardin changes things.
Oh my God. Wow, I could go down a rabbit hole in this. But
Yeah.
what
Wiley also. to
Oh,
bring,
absolutely.
is just absolute proof that genius happens to some people.
Yeah. Oh God, I want to see you two collaborate.
And insanely hard work, but and eating at WD-50 was not a frou-frou experience. It wasn't nitpicky. It was just all amazing. Like when you got something, you weren't. You kind of wanted to know the technique behind it, but at Alinea, for example, the technique is a lot of the fun of the place. Whereas with Wiley, it was the food. Just however he made that thing. Yeah.
And I hope we get more of that. What is the last meal that somebody cooked for you in their home?
Let's see. It would have been. Oh, not at my home?
So you went over to somebody's house.
Boy, I can't even recall.
This is the thing. It's
I can't. Boy.
Somebody invite Doug over.
No.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I've been over to anyone else's place to eat other than just holiday food. I honestly don't. It's been years since anyone invited me over for a meal.
We need to fix that.
Actually, no. People have invited me. I haven't been able to do it, so it hasn't happened. But in general, there haven't been a lot of invitations.
Didn't mean it. Yeah, we're going to change this for you.
Yeah, one of my things about New York City is I don't go out enough. So, yeah.
I'll cook for you.
Okay.
Yay.
Fine.
So who is?
Okay.
Yeah, let's next time you're in town.
Okay.
Come over to my.
Now we're on to number 3 or 4. Yeah.
That was 3.
Okay.
Number 4. What living musician would you want to cook for, and what would you cook for them?
Well, I made ice cream for Tommy Lee at his house.
How'd that go?
It was amazing. Tommy is as enthusiastic about learning as you can imagine, and I remember explaining to him how emulsifiers work to hold together oil and water.
You're like, no big deal. Just talking to Tommy Lee about emulsifiers.
And I just told him, ice cream is like this, or oil's like this, and the molecules don't want to fit together, so you have to put something in to bind them. And he's like, "Holy shit, man, this is sciencey." And he just loved it. And he has such genuine enthusiasm over stuff. And he's a guy he's made some bad choices, but the guy has been beaten down in so many ways that to know there's such joy in the guy is wonderful. We went to dinner with him and his then girlfriend and Dana Delaney at Son of a Gun. And that was another fun time. Tommy wasn't drinking then, and he liked to start off with dessert because it was like, he's used to having drinks before dinner.
Yeah.
So he would have a dessert before and after dinner, which I think is so charming.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, learning so many things.
So who else would it be? I always want to meet Paul McCartney, but there's really I wouldn't have a discussion with him.
He's vegan, isn't he too?
Oh,
So
forget him.
yeah.
I'll make him a pile of kale. How about Dave Grohl?
Oh well, yeah.
Yeah, because I would love to sit and have dinner with him and just let him talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Okay.
Final question.
Yeah.
You have 5 minutes for self-care. What do you do? You can give the dirty answer.
No,
it's
I
fine.
can't. I mean, I bet most people automatically jump to what I just jumped to. I love cleaning my ears. Love cleaning my ears. There's something about that horrible thing, where you're
With the
not supposed to
Q-tip?
jam a Q-tip in your ear. It feels so good.
There's something about it.
Right? It's so strange. You're putting a foreign body where it absolutely shouldn't go.
Kids don't do this.
Oh, it's terrible, but I love jamming Q-tips in my ear.
You take the full 5 minutes for the scrape out.
And then I just jam it in and out. Yeah, it's terrible. But yeah, I love. Yeah, and you got to get a good brand of Q-tip. You have to get
Q-tip brand
Q-tips.
Q-tip.
You can't get a store brand.
I've tried.
Oh, it's terrible.
And if you get
it's
the
like
ones
you,
with
it's like you just poked yourself with a stick.
And if you can get the ones with the wooden stick.
Oh,
the Q-tips
terrifying.
I love it.
Oh, really? Those are like something you take a sample from a person's the back of their tongue, DNA swab.
So
I love flossing too. So I guess this is a lot of face-focused stuff.
I really enjoy. I got Douglas a water pick.
I have a cheap spin brush.
Yeah.
And I love it. And, I'm a really bad grinder, but using a spin brush before bed actually helps me calm my face down, because it's very hypnotic. You just hold the thing and sort of move it along, and it actually has helped my grinding a lot.
That's so basically you're going to be on your land with
my Q-tips.
Sitting in the middle, with making ice cream sandwiches, cleaning your ears in the middle of your land.
That sounds fine, doesn't it?
I want this for you.
You can come visit.
I will.
You buy the church next door.
Oh my God. Thank you.
I want to live next. I also want an abandoned church on the edge of the property.
I think I can hook you up.
Dave refuses to live near a graveyard. I don't know why. That's the thing it is.
So you and I are going to have a compound upstate. There's land right behind mine.
And we also talk about zombie defense and stuff like that around the perimeter and where you'd have the watchtower. We have a lot of plans for this place.
Oh my God. If you want to follow Doug and his plans for his zombie apocalypse future, you can follow it like Big Gay Ice Cream on all the socials, right?
Yep.
They can find you there.
I've tried to extricate some of myself from our social media feeds because the brand has to be the brand now. Initially it was just sort of me hawking it, but now the brand has to sell the brand. So
if they want to find what you're doing,
you can still get the sense of humor from it, though. I mean, it's just not much personal stuff.
They should. Yeah, look, go to a Big Gay ice cream shop if you live near one. Go and buy those pints. Demand it from your grocer.
Well, no, actually, go to the stores and buy the cones.
Yeah.
Go to our stores to buy the cones. I mean, get the pints too, but
for people who are living out there in the world.
If you're outside and you get the pints, I really think that we're giving you a great adaptation of what our menu means to us.
Yeah.
It's extension, and we didn't just replicate cones. There are some that are based on cones, but we also came up with new stuff, and it was just such an inspirational process.
Yeah. Folks, go and buy these. Seek them out. Seek out and go and buy the book and do all of those things and just fall in love with Doug Quint like I have. And, if you want to listen to more Communal Table,
what would you do?
I would really like it for other people to listen to Communal Table. And you can find it on foodandwine.com. You can find it on our YouTube page. Yeah, you can find it really anywhere you can get podcasts. You can get it through your fillings. You can get it if you have an Invisalign. I think you can get it through there. But also Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Stitcher.
Hearing aids in both ears.
Yeah.
Can I get it by Bluetooth somehow?
I think
can you beam right into my head?
We will do it for you.
Kat Kinsman is in my head.
I know it's a terrible place to be, but for me to be in people's heads, I'm sorry about that. But if you want more of that, and if you happen to like it, you can leave a comment, you can leave stars, because that really helps us out a lot. And it's part of Food and Wine Pro that has a newsletter that you can subscribe to, and it's a really lovely thing. You can find me on Twitter at @kittenwithawhip, and I wanted to thank our producers too. We've got Jen Martnick, we've got Hallie. What's your last name? Hallie Tarpley. She's doing a wonderful job.
Hallie what?
Tarpley? Tarpley. Hallie Tarpley.
Okay.
We've got Douglas Wagner, who wrote our great theme song. It's just a whole bunch of people go together to make this podcast. But you know what I want you to do?
Well, buy a chapstick?
I want people to take care of themselves until the next time, and also buy chapsticks.
I've always told people, when they mention their chapstick, I don't know why you buy those. If you look at the sidewalk, you're going to find one. You can get it for free. Same with combs. Just walk at the ground. And they always think I'm serious for a minute.
I think you are.
So.
And be well, clean your ears, get some straight chapstick. Take good care of yourself till the next time.
Can we go now?